We are diving deep today into a single piece of culture that's so monumental, so pervasive, that everyone who hears its name instantly, well, they conjure up the image of a giant toothy smile underwater. We are talking, of course, about Steven Spielberg's 1975 classic, Jaws.
And if you're like most people, you think you know this movie. You know the theme music, you know the ending.
Right, you're going to need a bigger boat.
Exactly. But what we're doing today is deliberately ignoring the basic plot. We're not concentrating on the monster. We are concentrating on the seismic cultural and economic shift this film kicked off.
Precisely. Our mission here is to use Jaws as a shortcut, a lens, really, to examine a pivotal moment in history.
Yeah.
We're going to look at how a nightmare production schedule actually forced genius, how this one movie permanently rewrote the rules of Hollywood marketing.
And distribution.
And how academics used a killer shark to debate class and corruption and, political failure in the post-Watergate era.
It's the ultimate legacy dive. But just for context, we do have to establish the bare bones of the narrative.
It's just the scaffolding.
The action takes place in the fictional New England resort town of Amity Island, which is suddenly terrorized by a massive great white shark.
And we have our hero, Police Chief Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider. He's this sensible transplant from New York who sees the danger right away.
And he's immediately forced into this conflict. It's an ancient, dramatic conflict, really pitting public safety against commercial greed.
Which is represented by the Veal mayor, Larry Vaughn.
Mayor Vaughn, played by Murray Hamilton, is terrified of closing Amity's beaches, even after the first couple of attacks.
Right, Chrissy Watkins and then young Alex Kintner.
Because it would just destroy the pound's entire summer economy. So this political tension sets up the trio that defines the second half of the film.
Brody, and he's joined by the oceanographer Matt Hooper.
Who represents science and, inherited wealth.
And the eccentric, primal shark hunter, Quint.
Who is all about working class expertise. The ultimate fate of those three men stuck on that dilapidated boat, the Orca. That's the heart of the thriller.
So that's the frame. But the story of how it was built and how that construction chaos led to such artistic brilliance, that's where our deep dive really begins.
I think we have to start with the sheer luck involved in this project, even getting greenlit.
Okay, so before the novel by Peter Benchley was even published in 1974, producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown acquired the film rights. What did they pay for it?
They paid $175,000, which might not sound like a huge figure now.
No.
But if you adjust for inflation, that's over $1.2 million today. A pretty hefty bet on a book that wasn't even out yet.
So how did they even find it?
This is the amazing part. The origin story is that David Brown was reading the literature section of Cosmopolitan magazine.
Cosmo. Seriously.
Seriously. His wife, Helen Gurley Brown, edited it. And he saw a little notice just describing the plot.
A plot summary in Cosmopolitan launched the entire summer Blockbuster era.
That's incredible.
It really is. They read the book overnight and were instantly hooked. But here's the kicker.
They were also worried about the execution. Brown later admitted that if they had read the book twice, they probably never would have attempted the film.
Why not?
Because they would have realized how fundamentally difficult it would be to pull off filming a giant, reliable shark in the open ocean.
And their choice of director shows that early. Well, maybe overconfidence. They entrusted this impossibly difficult aquatic production to a director who was only 26 years old.
Steven Spielberg.
A kid, basically.
He was fresh off his first theatrical film, The Sugarland Express, but he saw the connection immediately. He realized Jaws was, in a lot of ways, very similar to his 1971 TV film, Duel.
Oh, right, with the truck. The unstoppable truck terrorizing the driver.
Exactly. He felt both films dealt with these massive, destructive leviathans targeting ordinary men.
And there's that great piece of film trivia that connects the two.
I love this. He actually took the sound effect of the truck being crushed in Duel.
That deep metallic screech.
And repurposed it. That's the mechanical shark's death roar at the end of Jaws. It's a literal link between his two monsters.
But there was a moment where he almost backed out, right?
There was. A brief moment of director drama. Spielberg got cold feet. He was worried about being typecast as the truck and shark director, and he wanted to go make a different project.
So what happened?
Universal exercised its contractual right to veto his departure. Producer David Brown basically convinced him to stay by promising him, if you do Jaws, you can make all the films you want later.
Wow. That promise turned into the understatement of cinematic history.
It really did. But when they started, the pressure was immense. Universal set the budget at, what, $3.5 million?
A very modest sum with a tight 55-day shooting schedule. They wanted it all wrapped up by the end of June 1974 to avoid a potential Screen Actors Guild strike.
Which brings us to the chaotic writing process. I mean, it was a mess. Spielberg knew he needed to keep the core plot,
Sure.
but he immediately started jettisoning elements from the novel, especially Benchley's subplots.
And the most famous one he cut was the adulterous affair between Brody's wife Ellen and Hooper. Why did he do that?
He felt that kind of betrayal, that internal drama, would just compromise the essential camaraderie you need for the second half of the film.
He needed them to be allies.
Right. He needed Brody, Hooper, and Quint to be allies facing this external threat, not rivals fighting over personal issues. It was a choice to elevate the suspense and the thematic unity.
So Benchley wrote the first 3 drafts, focusing, as he later admitted, mainly on the ocean stuff and the plot.
But he said he lacked the skill to put character texture into a screenplay. So the script was too mechanical.
And to fix this, Spielberg hired the comedy writer and actor Carl Gottlieb.
And this was supposed to be a quick 1-week dialogue polish.
Just a little punch-up.
Instead, Gottlieb ended up rewriting pretty much the entire script over the 9 weeks of principal photography.
I love that story of collaborative chaos.
Mm-hmm.
The script became this living, breathing document.
Yeah, the sources say the script for a scene was often finished the night before it was shot.
And only after Gottlieb, Spielberg, and the actors had basically workshopped the scene together over dinner.
It was pure organic creation, and that's why so many of the film's famous lines came directly from the actors' improvisations during those sessions.
And we know there was a massive list of uncredited writers who contributed, right?
Yeah.
Howard Sackler, John Milius.
The Sugarland Express writers Matthew Robbins and Hal Barwood. It truly took a village to generate that script while the cameras were already rolling.
Of all the changes made in this rapid-fire process, Spielberg insisted on 2 huge adjustments. Both are key to the film's success. What was the first one?
The first was critical, making Chief Brody the lawman who's supposed to restore order afraid of the water.
He's an urban jungle cop.
Right, and now he's facing this new, terrifying element. It instantly humanized him and made him the relatable common man who has to overcome his own fear to save everyone else.
That's brilliant. If he was just some grizzled sea dog, the audience wouldn't connect with the fear in the same way. And the second change was the ending itself.
Benchley's novel ended.
Yeah.
Well, anticlimactically. The shark just dies from extensive wounds.
Not very cinematic.
Not at all. Spielberg knew that wouldn't work for a summer audience. He insisted on changing the ending to the dramatic scuba tank explosion, which he felt was necessary for a big, rousing ending.
And if you look at the box office, he was definitely right about what audiences wanted. But let's just linger for a moment on the most famous piece of dialogue in the film.
Quint's USS Indianapolis monologue.
Chilling.
That monologue, detailing the sinking of the warship and the shark attacks on the sailors, it's responsible for so much of the film's depth and psychological terror. It gives you this horrifying, real-world grounding for Quint's obsession.
And yet the authorship's a total mess. Who actually wrote it?
Well, Spielberg described it as a 3-way collaboration. Howard Sackler wrote the original outline, John Milius extended it.
And then Robert Shaw, a playwright himself, partially rewrote it on set.
But then you have Carl Gottlieb, who downplays Milius's contribution and gives most of the credit for the final version to Shaw's on-set rewrite.
And Quint's character itself was based on real people.
It's loosely based on sport fisherman Frank Mundus and eccentric Martha's Vineyard locals like a fisherman named Craig Kingsbury.
Spielberg saw Kingsbury as the purest version of Quint.
Right, and his mannerisms and some of his off-screen phrases were reportedly folded into the script.
Okay, so let's pivot from creative chaos to just physical disaster. This is the central, beautiful paradox of Jaws.
The failures of the production created the masterpiece.
The shoot went catastrophically over budget and schedule.
David Brown noted the budget escalated from $3.5 million to $9 million.
More than double.
And the production schedule ballooned to 159 days when it was initially scheduled for 55. The crew even nicknamed the film Flaws.
And the central villain of the production, the thing that caused 90% of the trouble,
Was Bruce.
Ah, Bruce, the mechanical shark.
Named after Spielberg's lawyer, Bruce Raymer, he was pneumatically powered, built by a team of 40 effects technicians. But Bruce hated the ocean.
He'd constantly malfunction. The salt water corroded the internal mechanics in the synthetic skin.
And the neoprene foam that made up the skin absorbed all the water, causing the shark to balloon and sag.
So it looked less like a predator and more like a waterlogged bath toy.
And these weren't just small malfunctions, it was total chaos. The platform that towed the shark models literally capsized.
And Spielberg calculated that during a typical 12-hour workday, they were only getting, on average, maybe 4 hours of actual filming done.
It was an absolute nightmare, and the chaos wasn't limited to the shark. I mean, you hear these anecdotes, it sounds like the set itself was trying to kill them.
Like what?
Unwanted sailboats constantly drifted into frame, cameras got soaked, and the Orca itself once began to sink with the actors still on board.
That's right. The sinking was a near disaster. And there was real-life friction between the leads, too.
Oh, yeah. Robert Shaw was dealing with some serious tax issues and would sometimes just flee the set to Canada. And he had this very real, well-known grudge against Richard Dreyfuss.
So the antagonism between Quint and Hooper on screen
Was rooted in this highly volatile, real-world friction.
And Carl Gottlieb himself was nearly decapitated by the Orca's propellers.
Richard Dreyfuss was also nearly trapped in the steel cage during that famous shark attack sequence. It's a miracle they finished the movie at all.
And the editor, Verna Fields, she rarely had material to work with because, as Spielberg admitted, we would shoot 5 scenes in a good day, 3 in an average day, and none in a bad day.
But this is it. This notorious, troubled production, this string of failures, ended up being the godsend.
Wait, how does catastrophic failure become a godsend?
Because the unreliable mechanical shark forced Spielberg to abandon his initial vision. He called it a Japanese Saturday matinee horror flick.
He couldn't show the monster.
He couldn't, so he pivoted entirely to Hitchcockian suspense.
The constraint bred the genius. The shark is only hinted at for so much of the film. You see the floating yellow barrels or just the dorsal fin.
That forced restraint is precisely what makes the film so terrifying. It's the psychological dread, not the special effect.
Spielberg said it himself. The film went from a Japanese Saturday matinee horror flick to more of a Hitchcock. The less you see, the more you get thriller.
He even drew influence from 1950s sci-fi films like The Thing from Another World, which succeeded by focusing on the effects of the monster rather than the monster itself.
And because the shark was so fake-looking when it did work, he had to lean entirely on the actors.
Exactly. The raw terror and tension between Scheider, Shaw, and Dreyfuss had to sell the concept. Spielberg felt, the more fake the shark looked in the water, the more my anxiety told me to heighten the naturalism of the performances.
We have to mention the incredible story about the footage of the shark attacking the cage.
That was shot by Ron and Valerie Taylor in South Australia. They used a small stuntman in a miniature cage to make the real great whites look enormous.
And when a real shark attacked the empty cage, the footage was so stunning.
So stunning that Spielberg rewrote the script. Originally, Hooper died in the cage. He rewrote it so Hooper could escape, just so they could use that incredible live footage.
So a wild shark in Australia literally rewrote the screenplay and saved Richard Dreyfuss's character.
That's what the executive on set said. The shark down in Australia rewrote the script and saved Dreyfuss's character. So principal photography finally wraps after 159 days.
104 days over schedule.
Spielberg admitted he worried he would be blackballed because no one had ever taken a film 100 days over schedule.
But the final polish with editor Verna Fields sealed the deal. Zanuck said she came in and reconstructed some scenes that Steven had constructed for comedy and made them terrifying, and some scenes he shot to be terrifying and made them comedy scenes.
She honed that perfect balance. And the famous jump scare Hooper discovering Ben Gardner's severed head, that was actually reshot and paid for by Spielberg out of his own pocket. Universal refused the $3,000 cost. That scene is pure Verna Fields influence.
Okay, so once the film was successfully assembled, its power just transcended the thriller genre immediately.
In part because it tapped into these deep, established literary and cinematic traditions that gave it, some intellectual heft.
The artistic foundation is huge. The most notable influence, of course, is Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
It's an undeniable parallel. Quint, the obsessed hunter, he's Captain Ahab. His boat is even named the Orca.
After the great white's only natural enemy.
And we know it was intentional. While the ending was changed, the original screenplay ended with Quint being dragged under by the harpoon line, a direct echo of Ahab's death.
But the connection to high literature gets surprisingly political, tying back to that Mayor Vaughn conflict.
Right. Gottlieb and Spielberg consciously called the project Moby Dick Meets Enemy of the People.
The Henrik Ibsen play.
The Ibsen play that connects the monster horror to civic corruption. In the play, a doctor warns the town leaders their tourist springs are contaminated, but they ignore him because they want the revenue.
It's the perfect parallel. Brody's warnings about public safety are dismissed by Mayor Vaughn, who's terrified of losing the summer economy.
Critics recognized this immediately. One called the film a deft combination of Watergate and Ibsen's play.
And structurally, people realized Jaws was this genre melting pot. It blended forms that were rarely seen together at that budget level.
It was a nature-based monster movie, but the first half, with the unseen predator picking off victims, that feels like a slasher film.
And the second half, with the three men trapped on the boat, becomes a buddy film.
But the sheer relentlessness of the shark gives it the weight of supernatural horror. It's like a nearly satanic menace.
That complexity is why Jaws became such a magnet for scholarly criticism, especially since it came out right on the heels of the national trauma of Watergate.
Yeah, let's unpack those post-Watergate readings. Stephen Heath saw Chief Brody, the white middle-class cop who restores order, as representing the restoration of public order through fear and decency.
Brody is the common man we can trust when our institutions fail us.
And Peter Biskin emphasized that institutional failure, arguing the venal mayor was the sole human villain. The message seemed to be, the political system might be corrupt, but the problem is the corrupt man at the top, not the whole structure.
Then you have Andrew Britton, who focused on the ending the explosion. He saw it as a communal exorcism, a ceremony for the restoration of ideological confidence.
Suggesting that individual action by the one just man is still a viable source for social change. A very optimistic post-trauma message for America.
A return to a solvable problem. But Biskind offered a much more cynical class analysis of the trio on the Orca. This is where it gets really interesting.
Biskin argued that Quint, representing working-class toughness and bourgeois independence, must be eliminated. Devoured, in fact.
So that the new order can be established.
The common man, Brody, allies with the technocrat, Hooper, to defeat the old, primal populism of Quint.
Symbolizing the marginalization of older working-class expertise in favor of a new corporate order. That is a surprisingly harsh reading of a monster movie.
It is, but it speaks to the depth critics were finding. But the most famous analysis came from Frederick Jameson, who focused on the sheer versatility of the monster itself.
He used that term, the shark's polysemousness. What does that mean in simple terms?
It means the shark is a blank screen. It's highly suggestive. Because the monster is non-human and doesn't represent a specific political group, the audience can project multiple anxieties onto it.
So the shark could be anything the audience feared most.
Exactly. Jameson suggested it could be external threats like communism, or internal anxieties like the dread of death or the unreality of contemporary American life.
And what was the ideological function of that? Why did it matter that the threat was a shark?
Jameson said the shark's nature allows messy, complex social anxieties to be folded back into apparently natural ones. Complicated political fear is reduced to a simple, solvable biological conflict.
So that alliance of Brody and Hooper becomes an allegory of an alliance between the forces of law and order and the new technocracy of the multinational corporations.
It's dense stuff, but it shows how a simple film was used to process national anxieties.
And all of that dread, all of that terror is fundamentally inseparable from John Williams' score.
The score is an icon in its own right. We're talking about that simple alternating two-note pattern.
The bass line, EF or FF sharp, it became the gold standard for suspense music.
It was famously played by tuba player Tommy Johnson, and Williams wrote it in a high register to make it sound a little more threatening. He described the theme as grinding away at you just as a shark would do, instinctual, relentless, unstoppable.
The simplicity is what makes it so primal. I've read interpretations that it mimics the shark's heartbeat.
Or human respiration, the sound of panic itself.
What I find so brilliant about it is how it works with silence. You get so conditioned to hear that music before the shark arrives.
That when the shark does appear suddenly during the climax without any music, the effect is even more jarring. It's a masterful manipulation of your expectations.
Spielberg readily admitted the film would have been only half as successful without the score.
And Williams confirmed that Jaws jump-started his career, solidifying his role as Spielberg's essential collaborator.
And finally, let's talk about the immediate, measurable effect this film had on its audience. This wasn't just fun frights. This was clinical stress.
The film became notable in the medical community for causing actual stress reactions.
Right, the documented case of cinematic neurosis. A 17-year-old girl experienced sleep disturbances and anxiety that escalated into convulsions where she was screaming, "Sharks! Sharks!"
This phenomenon placed Jaws, along with films like The Exorcist, into medical case studies. It just underscores how deeply and effectively the film tapped into our primal fears.
Okay, so the troubled production defined the art. The release strategy defined the modern film industry.
Absolutely. Jaws isn't just a high-grossing movie. It is the genesis point of the entire summer blockbuster business model.
And that shift began with an unheard of amount of money just for marketing. Universal spent $1.8 million.
And the critical part of that budget was $700,000 aimed specifically at national television spot advertising.
You have to picture this media blitz. About 24 30-second ads airing every single night on primetime TV in the days leading up to the firm's opening.
It was a synchronized national carpet bombing of media. They coordinated the whole strategy with the paperback publisher Bantam, agreeing on a unified, high-impact title logo that was just everywhere.
And the centerpiece of that marketing, the image that sold millions of tickets, was Roger Castell's iconic poster art.
The menacing shark approaching the lone swimmer from below. The ad agency spent 6 months perfecting that image because they understood it had to be simple and full of dread.
That simple, unified, high-concept marketing led to the unprecedented merchandise explosion.
Graham Turner called the merchandise associated with Jaws probably the most elaborate array of tie-ins ever seen at that time.
We're not just talking about posters and T-shirts. We're talking shark costumes, towels, soundtrack albums, and the game of Jaws.
Oh, I remember that game where you had to fish items out of the shark's mouth before the jaws snapped shut.
Yes. That game and all those other tie-ins showed the studios the overwhelming profit potential of franchising a concept immediately and universally.
But the second, and arguably most foundational innovation, was the actual theatrical release pattern. This is what created the summer blockbuster.
Before Jaws, major films opened selectively in a few big cities and then slowly expanded if word of mouth was good.
The road showing model.
Jaws completely scrapped that. It debuted on 464 screens across North America, an exceptionally wide release for the time.
And coupling that wide release with heavy national TV advertising was virtually unheard of. They called it saturation booking.
And the financial results were just staggering.
Yeah.
And instantaneous.
It set a record with a $7 million opening weekend, a massive number for 1975, and grossed $21.1 million in its first 10 days, instantly recouping its production costs.
It held the #1 spot for 14 consecutive weeks. In just 78 days, it surpassed The Godfather to become the highest-grossing film at the North American box office.
It was the first film in history to earn $100 million in U.S. theatrical rentals, and its global performance was the same.
This success marked the emphatic end to Hollywood's 5-year recession. Jaws, and 2 years later, Star Wars, established the modern business model.
Action and adventure films with easily marketed high-concept premises, released during the summer season in thousands of theaters.
This is why summer became the prime season for studios' biggest movies. Traditionally, summer was for dumping low-expectation films. Jaws reversed that entirely.
But this massive profit came at a cost. The studios looked at the profit potential and recalibrated the whole industry. This ended the new Hollywood period, where filmmakers had enjoyed significant creative freedom.
As the critic Peter Bissing noted, Spielberg was the Trojan horse through which the studios began to reassert their power. The influence was immediate. Suddenly, every script was pitched as a variation on the theme.
Like Alien being pitched as Jaws in space.
Right. The high-concept, fast-pacing, wide-release structure became the powerful new formula.
So beyond the business model, the film's cultural impact had these profound and lasting consequences, both good and bad.
This is the infamous Jaws effect. Just as Psycho made people afraid of showers, Jaws caused this widespread, genuine anxiety about going into the ocean.
People reported reduced beach attendance in 1975, and there were serious panic questions about whether sharks could migrate into places like Lake Michigan.
It turned the ocean into a global source of primal dread.
But the darker side of this legacy relates directly to shark conservation. The film is still widely seen as responsible for perpetuating negative stereotypes and for inspiring the decimation of the shark population.
The sources detail how the Jaws effect prompted legions of fishermen who piled into boats and killed thousands of sharks in fishing tournaments seeking trophies.
And this terrible unintended consequence led to a very rare and public expression of regret from the creators.
Right. Peter Benchley, the author, spent the later part of his life campaigning fiercely for shark protection. He repeatedly stressed that the premise of Jaws was entirely a fiction.
And Spielberg echoed that sentiment, stating he truly regretted the film's influence on the decimation of the shark population. It's a powerful lesson in the unintended ecological fallout of mass media.
Moving to its established place in film history, the film received major recognition. It won 3 Academy Awards.
Best Film Editing for Verna Fields, Best Sound, and the essential Best Original Dramatic Score for John Williams.
It was also nominated for Best Picture, which was huge. However, Spielberg was conspicuously not nominated for Best Director.
A slight he later admitted he greatly resented at the time.
But the long-term rankings confirm its masterpiece status. In 2001, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry,
Recognizing it as a landmark horror film and, critically, the first official summer movie.
The American Film Institute cemented its place, ranking it #56 on the 100 Greatest American Films list and #2 on the 100 Most Thrilling Films list.
Right behind Psycho.
And John Williams' score ranked 6th on the AFI's list of greatest film scores.
And that dialogue, forged in those chaotic dinner meetings, it stuck. Roy Scheider's line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," came in at 35th on AFI's list of top 100 movie quotes.
The sustained legacy is also evident in modern adaptations and tributes. The theme park rides, the video games.
And what's fascinating now is how the difficulties of the production have become artistic subject matter themselves, the meta-narrative.
Yes, Robert Shaw's son, Ian Shaw, co-wrote and starred in the play The Shark is Broken,
Which focused entirely on the stormy, real-life difficulties and ego clashes during the production. And there was also a musical called Bruce that covered the mechanical shark issues.
The story of the production is now as famous as the film. And speaking of Bruce, the troublesome mechanical shark is now a physical icon.
A replica, created from the original mold, was donated to the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in 2020 after spending 25 years in a junkyard.
It's now an essential artifact marking the beginning of the Blockbuster era.
The final, less flattering part of the legacy is just the sheer volume of failed imitators. Jaws spawned 3 official sequels.
Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and the truly disastrous Jaws, The Revenge.
All of which saw declining critical favor. They proved how hard it was to replicate the original's magic without Spielberg.
And beyond the official sequels, there was a vast number of what Spielberg called rip-offs, like Orca, Grizzly, and Piranha.
Although, to his credit, Spielberg did commend Joe Dante's Piranha as the best of the Jaws rip-offs. It showed the core formula was powerful, even in imitation.
So we've covered the ground. We found that Jaws is so much more than a monster movie. It is a blueprint for modern cinema, a complex subject for academic study.
And an event whose accidental constraints, that notorious failure of Bruce Forrest's artistic brilliance.
The ultimate genius wasn't the monster that kept failing.
It was the confluence of everything. The Hitchcockian suspense, the evocative primal score by John Williams, the revolutionary marketing campaign, and the innovative wide-release business strategy. It fundamentally reset the American film industry.
And as we noted, Jaws is celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2025 with major theatrical re-releases, meaning its legacy remains active, terrifying, and profoundly relevant.
And that leads to a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Given the intense psychological, sociological, and economic analysis, critics applied to Jaws in the 1970s, analyzing its hidden anxieties about class conflict, political venality, and ideological restoration.
What modern blockbuster, that seemingly simple, easily marketed, high-concept action film from the last few years, do you think will be subjected to this exact level of critical scrutiny 50 years from now? Which massive contemporary summer success is secretly carrying the weight of our current complex social and political anxieties?
That is the ultimate test of a cultural phenomenon. Think about it the next time you hear those 2 low, relentless notes.